Hi everyone, I'm Jodi Barrows with The Square and a Square. If you've been following my Facebook page, you'll see that while I've been on the road with all these miles that we travel, I enjoy doing handwork. In the last few months, it's been Hexies. Hexies have kind of taken the quilt world by storm the last little bit, and I thought I would show you the way that I do them and give you a few tips and hints to make your Hexies fun and exciting to do. Now, first of all, you'll need to choose the size of Hexie that you want and get the pre-cut cardboard pages. When you get your Hexies, they measure along this outside edge of one side, and that will be the size. So this is a 1-inch Hexie that I'm working with. But when you measure across from one side to the other, it's 1 3/4. So I thought that might help you understand what size of Hexie to get, or if someone refers to a certain size, it's what the measurement is along one edge. So after you've chosen the size of Hexie you want, you need to start cutting them out. You can use the little pre-cut plexiglass Hexies, and of course the Hexie plastic needs to be 1/4 of an inch bigger on all of the sides so that you have your seam allowance. If you are using the plexiglass templates to cut with, and you're using fat quarters, you can get anywhere from about 55 to 65 of these Hexies out of one fat quarter. Or you can just go in and use your leftover scraps or strips. So my strip has to be at least about 2 1/4 so that I can get my Hexie completely on there. And what you'll want to do is just take a little glue stick and just give one little dab and put it on the fabric. And you can just cut right around this if you don't have the plastic templates, and then just come in here and cut, leaving 1/4 of an inch on the sides of the Hexie. And you can cut multiple layers. When I was cutting for my quilt that I'm working on, I was using fat quarters, and I could cut about 6 layers of fabric all at once. So when you look over here at all of these ones that I have cut, you can do layers at a time and just get a whole stack of them. I like to kind of mass produce and do a lot of one step all at once, so you can see how I have all of these little Hexies cut and put in my basket. Now you also can, if you're just using your strips or your scraps, you can come in here and put your Hexie, how you can just kind of fold the strips and put your Hexie on there, and you can cut multiples all at once. For example, in this one I am cutting 2 layers. So you don't have to have the little plastic template, but you can use a rotary cutter instead of scissors. So if you're kind of on a fold, you can kind of see how I did that. And then just come in here and cut your edges out. Now you will need a paper on each one, so if you're doing multiple layers all at once, you'll have to come back in and just use a little bit of a glue stick. You just need to kind of hold it in there a little bit so that when we get to the next step, your cardboard template won't move around on you. So after you have a whole bunch put on you can buy them all pre-cut in bags. We'll get these out of our way here. After you have your paper templates on your fabric, you'll need an iron and a mat and a working surface that's, I think, good and close to you. And I have just taken spray starch and just sprayed a little bit in my bowl. It might kind of foam up at the beginning, but as it sets here, the foam kind of goes away. Don't spray too much in there because of course you can't get it back into your spray starch, but it will kind of evaporate, and if you don't get everything done that day, you want to come back and spray some fresh ones. So here you can see how I have all of my colors of my fabric and my little paper templates. See how they're all glued in there for the colors that I want. Make sure your iron is nice and hot, and I'm going to keep my iron over here a little ways so that I can work here. Now I'll take you want kind of a fat bristly round brush. This is like a stencil brush, and I just dip it in there a little bit and then I'm going to just paint the seam allowance edge. And I think you can do, if you work fast with your iron, you can do all of your paint all of your sides at once. In the beginning, if you're not very fast, you maybe only want to paint 2 or 3 sides. And you can also work with a stiletto. I didn't get mine out for the demo today, but it's nice to work with a stiletto. And I like having a little travel iron. For one thing, they stay on, they don't turn off, and they get very, very hot. Now, a stiletto will help if you don't have any fingernails. You can see how I'm just using the iron and pressing that seam allowance of that fabric over the edge of that paper template. And I just keep going around it. Like I said in the beginning, you may not be too fast and your fabric may dry out, and so maybe only do 2 or 3 sides with your starch. And then when you can see how I have all 6 sides turned, I'll turn it over and I'll give it a little press. Now, if you get your cardboard too wet, it may bend inside here and you don't get a straight edge. You can kind of see there how I don't have a straight edge. So I'll need to go in and see what has actually caused that. And it is that my paper kind of turned a little bit. So I will just go in and re-press that one. Because however that edge is that you have pressed, that's going to be your seam edge, and you want that's what you're going to butt up and sew, so you'll want it to be as nice and smooth as possible on all 4 sides. So I'm just going to keep going here, doing a couple so that you can see. And like I said, if you're getting it too wet, that cardboard edge may not stay firm and it may bend, so don't get it too wet. So you can see how I'm just taking the edge of the iron and pushing that fabric up over the cardboard edge. And you want to make sure that your corners are good and nice and sharp. I've got some fingernails here so I can kind of work with them, but a stiletto is really nice to help hold that fabric and help turn it without getting your fingers in the way of the iron. And you don't need a big iron. You can see here how you're just using the corners of the tip. So you may have some of those little more crafty type irons that you can use too. And then I'll just go over the top of all of it just like that. And I will just go through and do a whole bunch of them. I'll help you with your colors here in just a moment so you can decide how you want to do your colors. So your Hexies, most of them are put together in what I call a 6-petal flower. See how you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Hexies in there to make that complete turn of a flower. And then if you decide to go around it, then you would just sew your next layer around, and you would repeat this process but in a bigger circle pattern. Now when you put these 2 together, sometimes some people say to put your right sides together and square them all up and just stitch them through like this. Your paper helps preventing you from making too deep of a stitch because you can kind of feel in there. And don't get them too tight. If you do, you'll get kind of a rolled hem kind of edge in there, and your pieces won't turn and be as flat as you want. Now let me show you another way of putting these together that is kind of fun and neat. If you can kind of hold them so that they're just butted up next to each other and flat, you can actually take bigger stitches, and you don't necessarily have to have a contrasting thread. You will actually want a thread that you can see a little bit, and it could go a little faster and be a little smoother for you. It takes just a hair bit of practice with either one, but you just want to grab a little bit of the fabric and just kind of push it down till it hits that little cardboard edge, and then bring it up and push it through to the next one and pulling it. You don't want them too close together, but close enough that your pieces don't separate when you turn them. And I always kind of give 2 or 3 little stitches real tight at the beginning and end. Now when you look over here on the other side, you can see how that you have a nice smooth stitch. Sometimes at the beginning and end where it's not quite so tight, you might see a stitch, but and then when you pull them apart, but as you get them all hooked together, that will go away a little bit and they'll just kind of melt in there together. Now when I'm doing the 6-petal flower, you'll notice how I leave it open, how I've left that open on all of those. I like to sew my 6 petals together, keep my colors together. It helps keep me organized. Then I will come in and I will put my center in there, and it will help. When you leave this open, it helps give you more room to actually sew your piece in. So what you will do is you will start here on the inside and sew all the way around back to the beginning and then close it up. That way it holds in your hand and works a little better, not quite so tight. So turn it over. And I kind of liked, when I'm first starting with a new thread, I like to go 2 or 3 times, kind of right in that same spot, kind of building a knot. I don't necessarily work with a knot at the end of my fabric when I quilt or when I do handwork. So I need to leave a little bit of a tail out there so I don't pull it all the way through. Go through and make a couple of knots, a couple of stitches in one place that makes a knot, and then I'm ready to go in here and just stitch the 2 together, just butting them up nice and neat. I think it's important to work with a good light so that you can see what you're doing. Now when you're first getting started, they don't always stick together quite so well. It may take you 2 or 3 stitches to kind of get it rolling, but once you get going, your hexie will stay in place better. You can see how it's already staying in place better. And I'm just on my 3rd stitch. And you would just keep going around all the way around, and then when you get back to your starting place, then you would just connect those 2 together and you would have your flower with your center. Make sure you have good contrast. Think about your colors and where you're going to put them and how they're going to show up. Now the quilt that I'm actually working on is going to be a basket quilt. So I'm making it takes some time to work on your baskets, so you can go ahead and get started on your basket top while you're waiting for me to get the pattern completed. Now what you see in here is you see the 6-petal flower with the center, and you can see how I have 2 of those. Then I have what I call a 4-petal flower, 1, 2, 3, 4 with a center, and I have a 3-petal flower with a center. So 2 6 petals, 2 4 petals, and 2 3 petals. Then the green hexies are what I'm calling the leaves or the background. You can see how this one kind of makes an L with 6 leaf hexies, 3 leaf hexies over here, and then 2 over there. Now you're looking at it as this is the top and the bottom, and you can go ahead and get started on those. I'm working on 12 baskets, so that means I need 24 of the 6 petals, I need 24 of the 4 petals, and 24 of the 3 petals. Now when you get to the back, you can take your paper out whenever you want. As soon as you have all of the sides on, like you can see here in the middle, I think it's easy to go ahead and take your papers out, and you can just kind of go in there and grab them, and they just pull right out just like that. And see how nice the edge stays from where you starched it and pressed it, so that you can sew your next pieces to it. Now some people have talked about how that you can actually put your papers in here and glue the edges down instead of doing the starch, but the papers don't come out very easily. So here's another color combo that I've done. And when you look over here at these green ones here, you can see how this one we use the glue stick to actually glue the edges down, and look how hard it is to get in there and get that piece out. You kind of mess up your work, it kind of frays the fabric a little bit, and you can see how much time it takes trying to get in here to get those pieces out. So I prefer to do the starch instead of gluing those edges down with a glue stick. You can see here how much work and how it unfolds your fabric. It kind of ravels the edges out a little bit, and then you've got to go back in and turn it, and maybe even go back in and repress it, or take time to do a little basting stitch around the edge. So I really prefer, look how that was laying so nice and smooth, and now in the process of trying to get it out, it's kind of undone some of your work. So I really enjoy the pieces that are just glued in the center to hold it in place. You use the starch to go around the edges, and then just pull your piece out. And I'll show you the color combos and what I have ready to go. This one here, and this one that you just saw. I'll just kind of flip through some of these color combos. So you can just go in and use your fat quarters or your scraps. And you can kind of see the backs here. You need 24 6-petal flowers, 24 3, and 24 4. So go ahead and get started making your Hexies, and then when I get the pattern out later for you, you'll have your flower tops ready to go. Now this one is one in process. I'll show you. I like to work with, I got all 24 of my 6 petals done, all 24 of my 4, and so on, but I hadn't decided what I wanted to go in the middle yet until I see how all of my flowers are blending together. So you can kind of see here how I've went ahead and hooked them together so they keep their placement. But see, I've kept this one open so that it's easy to go in and put these centers in after I decide what color I want to go in there. See how those are still open? And then that makes it easy to go in and do that particular stitch. So I hope you've learned a little bit about working with Hexies, and they really are fun and exciting and fun to play with. You can do your colors in any combination that you want and just play with them. If you go online maybe and look for Hexie quilts, you'll see tons of different patterns and ideas. So enjoy your Hexies and get started. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.